Howdy. Hello. Hello, and welcome to the Undertale video. If you're interested, which you're probably not, but I am indeed recording this right after the video that I apologize in. I apologize, and then I say I don't. I apologize for apologizing. Did I make that clickbaity enough, that one video? Did I make it real sad and, pour some water on my eyes? I don't entirely remember, but we're here now. Like I said in that video, which you should probably watch, hey, that's why I'm plugging that video. I haven't been able to make this video. This one's been kind of waiting for a long time, and as you can see, I'm not entirely ready. Honestly, there's probably going to be a more in-depth video about Undertale later, probably around the time that Deltarune comes back, if it ever comes back, because this game is just so important. It's a very big game. It's a big game in every aspect of the word big and game, and a period at the end. This game is a monster to consider and think about. There's so much nuance and detail to the game, and there's a lot of stuff it says about gamers and people who play games. But that in-depth video will be for a later date. Right now we're just looking at a synopsis of the game. Because honestly, the narrative of the game is a little confusing, or mainly it's confusing if you look at how the internet kind of portrays it. The narrative, the base story of this game, kind of gets lost under all of the, Gaster stuff, and the Sans' Nest, and the Flowey whatever, whoever, the spook tunes, woo woo woo. I don't know why I really wanted to make that into a joke on this video, but I did. But I wanted to tell the story that's being told in the game, in the narrative of Undertale, of what you're playing, because it's there. There's an actual story here. No matter what path you choose, there's something being told about what happened before and during the time that you're here. And it's just kind of lost, I think, to the internet. I have not, as far as I've seen, which is a couple results, there's not a solid video just talking about the narrative and the story of specifically the Dremere family. The family under the crest of the Deltarune, which is important because if we're ever going to get to Deltarune, we might want to know the actual story of this family and how that might connect to the game. So, yeah, I just really want to clear this up, because after replaying it, it was super confusing, especially with everything the internet has said. So, let's get into it. Let's get into the synopsis. Let's go. Here we go with a synopsis of Undertale. Long ago, there was a war between humans and monsters, which caused monsters to be trapped underground by a barrier that can only be broken with 7 human souls, or passed by a monster and a human soul combined. A couple years later, the first human, possibly called Chara, but it was never explicitly said in the game. As far as we know, the first human's name is whatever you name the save slot, which if it's Chara, then yeah, it's gonna be Chara, but canonically, based on the narrative, it is whatever you name that child. You are naming the first fallen human. Anywho, that first fallen human had bad intentions for the underground. So when the first human went to the underground, he palled up with Asriel, and then tried to murder the king by poisoning his pie. After that failed, he's like, hey, why not just poison myself? And so he did that, because he wanted Asriel to consume his soul, so that he could take control of Asriel's body, murder the humans, probably go back and kill a bunch of monsters as well, and just kind of destroy everything. Fortunately, Asriel took control back from first human whatever. Look, the only reason I'm thinking that Chara might be a good thing to call this first human is just because it's very difficult to, think of another, it's a name. It's not the first fallen human, which takes a lot of, vocal power. But I want to say first fallen human because it makes it more kind of clear that I'm talking about the first fallen human, and not just some obscure name that everyone calls him. Because when you do that, it kind of makes it confusing to see who is who. First fallen human makes more sense because in the beginning of the game you are told to name the fallen human. And that fallen human you're naming is technically Chara, but more specifically, it's just the first fallen human. Whatever you name them, that is their name. The monster who looks like a human, etc., etc. Anywho, where was I? Oh yeah, Chara, or the first... See, it's too easy. The first fallen human takes control of Asriel's body until they get to the village, where Asriel takes control back from the first fallen human, and is, bludgeoned and hurt and badly wounded, he retreats back to the underground with flower seeds attached to him and runs back home to mommy and daddy. Not in like an insulting way, but like literally to mother and father, carrying back the fallen human's body. When he gets back, his ashes are spread across the flowers that he brought back, presumably. I think that it was pretty heavily implied that the flowers came from the village. Possible that they were there before, but it's also not super certain. Azrael's ashes are spread across the flowers. The first fallen human is buried, or not buried yet, put in a coffin, until Asgore decides to have a grief child murders plan, in which he kills 7 other human souls. 6 besides your character, but 7 other human souls. Unfortunately, it ended up being children's souls, but 6 other souls regardless, so that he could break the barrier and have his revenge. Toriel did not like this, so she retreated to the ruins with the body of the first fallen human and buried the first fallen human somewhere in the ruins, which I presume is why they take hold of Frisk's spirit and or your heart, and or you are controlling their heart that is controlling Frisk's body. That's my prediction, but we're not there yet. Asgore goes along, killing about 6 human souls, until he kinda gets bored of it. That was a joke. He doesn't like killing the human because they're all, children. So he decides to ask his royal scientist, whom at the time, was W.D. Gaster, the same person who created the core and gave the underground power. Gaster presumably probably worked on finding this cure. Maybe not. It's not very clear what Gaster did. The only thing that's, super obvious is that he created the core. I know I said I want to make this, about only the stuff in the narrative. I think that's in the narrative, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to leave it in here because I feel like you should mention W.D. Gaster at some point, but this is more like a fun value thing. It's much rarer to find, but it's in there, so. Anywho, he presumably did that before shattering across realities and being part of the fun value mechanic. And then in his place, Alphys took over as the royal scientist. Alphys is the one who presumably discovered determination, which is presumably the thing that allows human souls to persist after death. She starts experimenting with this on the fallen bodies of monsters, as well as inserting human determination from one of the human souls into an inanimate object. For instance, one of the flowers that probably had the ashes of Azrael on it. So you've got Azrael being a non-human with a human soul determination thing, which allows him to do all of the wacky stuff he does. After it worked, of course. It didn't work immediately after. Eventually it worked. Flowey, aka Azrael's. I think we can definitely differentiate Azrael and Flowey because they're very different people. They have similar memories and a similar kind of timeline, but Flowey's a much more messed up version of Azrael. And Azrael was, already kind of messed up because of the trauma that the first human probably put her through. Him. Wait, it's a him, right? Yeah, I think it's a him. Maybe it's a them. I don't know. But Azrael had trouble. Flowey has a lot more trouble. Got a messed up Groundhog Day type story going and playing Undertale. That's really how you explain it. Flowey played Undertale before anybody ever got to play Undertale, Restarting and trying all the different routes. Anywho, Flowey went to Asgore and asked for sympathy, but Asgore could not give him what he wanted because he is unable to feel in his flower body. Then Flowey went to Toriel, who was also unable to help, and so Flowey just kind of does stuff until Frisk comes around, the 8th human. In the meantime, Alphys is still working with determination and trying to create human soul-like power, and so she creates... Yeah, Alphys is she, Guys, this game tries really hard to make you feel included. This video, not as much, unfortunately. Maybe, I don't know. Alphys is continuing to work on trying to find something equivalent to the power of human determination, creates the amalgamates, gets some real low self-esteem, and then basically kind of shuts off from the entire thing. It's unclear what exactly she was doing right before the 8th human got to the underground, but most likely, I imagine she was kind of locking herself off, but not really doing much in the secret lab. Possibly. It's hard to say. But then that's most of, like, the solid, concrete story stuff that really matters. That doesn't require you going into the game code. The other stuff is just simple stuff like how Undyne became part of the Royal Guard, where Papyrus and Sans came from, Mettaton's origin and his connection to, like, Naps the Blook and stuff like that. But that's all, etc., type stuff. So I'm not gonna get into too much detail there. And then the 8th human arrives, and creates a big ol' ripple in the time-space continuum. Because somehow we are able to control their body instead of all the other bodies. Look, the logistics of it don't really make sense. I don't understand exactly why the 8th human is there, probably the same as the others. The 8th human probably just kind of wandered in because they're a kid and they don't know about the dangers of Mount Abbott. But at the same time, why is it taking this long for us, the player, to take control of them? It doesn't really make sense, it's a little unclear, but you know what, that's fine. Because at this point, there's a lot of variation in the story. At this point, your choice, it becomes your choice matters. Nobody has to die, kind of narrative. And there's a lot of variation in the story at this point. There's a lot of character development that happens based on how you treat other monsters. The first human's soul is able to take over and control Frisk and your soul, if you allow it to. The player's control loosens as you finish a pacifist run or, like, try to connect with these monsters more. Almost as if it's kind of like a true ending, And so you've kind of set the path kind of straight in that kind of context. The other ones are somewhat deviations where life kind of ceases to exist almost. And this is a pacifist run is the only way to have life continue after the game. This is the only way to let the monsters and humans live out their life after the game ends. There's also soulless runs, which are very altered and corrupted and what's the word? It's like perverted, that's the word. A very perverted version of all the other endings. Because there's like, I was about to say there's like there are 93 endings-ish. But then, like, if you add the soulless endings on top of that, you get like double, but really it doesn't matter for all of those. It only matters for a few of them. And then a bunch of other crazy stuff. Which this, like, variation stuff already went off the rails, but there's just random stuff that can happen after this, like the fun value stuff, which allows for an individual experience. Smaller choices you make that kind of impact in very small but very meaningful ways. And then you have the continuation in Deltarune, which is an entirely different scenario, which I do not want to get into right now. But the implications are there that this story could probably be seen as very similar to the next story, or it's a very influential to the story of Deltarune. I think that it's exploring entirely new concepts, probably. Why am I talking about Deltarune? I need to save that for when the full game comes out, or if I decide to make a video dedicated to Deltarune where I actually record stuff, because I don't have anything for Deltarune. I didn't record stuff for Deltarune. I only have Undertale. So we should only be talking about Undertale. So I should get to my final thoughts and evaluation. I've been trying to do this for so long, and I finally got it. I really should never do, like, solidly scripted stuff. It should all be bullet points and stuff, because that seems better. Very specific bullet points, mind you. Very, like, specific details and stuff. And, like, taking a quote I say while I'm writing, and maybe putting that down. But I'm more of a concept person. I should be more focused on the ideas. And the idea to Undertale, I knew there was a point here. The idea to Undertale is that there's a lot of variation in the story, but that doesn't mean that what happened beforehand isn't important. And that doesn't mean that you should overlook the narrative because there's just a bunch of stuff hidden in the background. Stuff that could be implicit and kind of devalue your whole experience with the game. Did any of that make sense? I don't know. I'm gonna go back to the cameras so I can finish up this video. And that was my synopsis of Undertale. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing, hopefully it wasn't too messy, but I did what I could with visuals and the script, so hopefully it's not bad. And if you want a really quick synopsis, it's peace, war, Chara, or the first fallen human, the 6 souls, your character, and then the, like, 3-ish deviations. So I was about to do some, like, deep, profound thoughts on the game and, like, how it relates to life, but I don't have time for it, actually. I will say that focusing more on the idea that you are controlling a different person seems like it's going to be important in the next game that Toby Fox makes. which will be exciting and fun either way whenever it gets out. But I think that people are going to be focused on the wrong things, and I want to make this video because hopefully it at least somewhat clears up the focus of the games. The narrative is about Deltarune, the kingdom of... Actually, while I was doing the video, I went back through the footage and it was like, Deltarune is the symbol for the kingdom of monsters. So it's not specifically about the Dromir family, but it's still about, the importance of monsters. And again, that's going to be really important in the game because it's called Deltarune. And if the Deltarune in this game was about the monsters, then I'm just saying, I feel like there's some stuff that people are missing, possibly. And especially with just the main narrative involving Flowey, Asgore, Toriel, Azrael, etc., Frisk, the first human, all of that. That whole thing feels like it's getting entirely ignored because of anything involving, Gaster or Sans or Flowey or, the other characters, aside from how they connect to the main narrative. Just because it is a multiple choice, choose your adventure game, doesn't mean that the main narrative isn't there. That doesn't mean that there's not a story being told that will have direct impact on whatever else Toby works on, because it feels like we're going based off of things that maybe were ignored or misunderstood. And I think that will make this next game very exciting and a lot of people aren't going to be able to predict it. But us, me and you, anybody who watches this video and me making the video, we know what's what, We know the truth. The first fallen human is a very important thing to think about. Knowing who the first fallen human is and who Chara is in comparison, and how Chara doesn't mean anything, that's important. And we know that. So, yeah, knowing the story as it's told, very important. So, and that is it for this video. So, thank you for watching. Have a good today, tonight, whatever, and I'll see you later. Bye. I really did not want to say all that, life is about not impacting others without changing their reality, man, or whatever. What did I write down? Just like real life, you're thrown into a developed, rich, and different world to live in. Just like your relationship with others, even if you influence others' choices, you don't control their future unless you kill everyone in sight. That was a side note, but still. Oh boy.